passion and pageantry of college football lives here. This is the Paul Finebaum Show, Hour 3 podcast.
This might be college football heaven.
And half of the program is live here on a Monday, day after the Super Bowl. And speaking of that, our next guest has spent a little bit of time in the Big Easy. Great piece here entitled A Mirror of America by Charlotte Wilder. We spoke to her many years ago when I believe she was with Fox at the time. And Charlotte, it has been way too long. We hope life is good. Thanks for joining us, and we can't wait to hear about your recent sojourn. Good afternoon.
Paul, so great to see you. I've missed you. I was like, this is what's missing from my life. So I was thrilled to get the call up again.
Well, thank you very, very much. So I'm going to get out of your way because I was in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, which loomed over Super Bowl week with all the security. But pick up your journey there last week and tell us what you saw.
So I was there for a few days, and I was struck by, of course, the added security presence from that horrible attack earlier in January. But I think I was also struck by how 8 years ago I had been at the Super Bowl when Trump had just been inaugurated the first time. And I know that a lot of people don't want politics in their sports. And I also use sports as an escape a lot of the time. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, if the world feels like a lot, I can put on a game, and it's kind of like it could be any point in my past. You're disconnected from time because the game and the rhythms are the same. But at the same time, Paul, I really do think that sports are a great way to kind of take stock of where we are culturally in any given moment. And I just felt there was an eeriness hanging over the Super Bowl a little bit that I tried to capture a little bit in my piece.
Yeah, and you certainly did. So take us through that. I realize some have read it, maybe not everyone watching or listening. So your journey saw what?
I saw, I think it was more of what was going on externally. I was in an Uber, and my Uber driver was telling me about the history of New Orleans and how much it meant to the people there, and how he got the sense that a lot of times people who come to New Orleans don't know its history, don't know that it was a city built by enslaved people of this dark past that this place has. And I think there are a lot of places in this country related to sports like that. Like when I went to Ole Miss, I was very struck by the deep history that is in these places that is really not what a lot of people want to talk about because it's so dark. But if you don't talk about it, you're kind of doomed to repeat it. And so I just think it's so important to not gloss over anything and to make sure that people know what they're seeing when they go to a place. I also just think, the Super Bowl is such a corporate event now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. I'm very grateful to the brands that have supported me. That's how this business works. But all of it taken together, and then, the players being asked about how they felt about Trump going to the game, and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes saying it was an honor, and then Jalen Hurts saying it wasn't added pressure. I just thought it was such an interesting time where you can, as much as you want to say that all of this is separate, it really is just a mirror of everything that's happening in the rest of the country.
Charlotte Wilder with us. It's interesting because I was on that very same field a couple of years ago, standing maybe 10 yards from the president at the time for the national championship game. And he's been to so many college games as recently as the Army-Navy game, the Alabama-Georgia game this year. I was really struck by the fact that the president had never gone to the biggest event this country has every year.
I sort of was too, Paul. I couldn't believe it when I saw that this was the first time that a sitting president was going to be at the game. I guess a lot of times they would do the interview with the president that would run on the broadcast. But man, the security's got to be a real pain. I feel like it must have taken people a lot longer to get to the game this time.
No, it is. We not to bore you, but we were doing our show a couple of years ago in Atlanta, outside. and then I had to go from this show to the pregame show. And they had it was also pouring down rain, and so they literally stopped letting people in for an hour, and we had to navigate that. Fortunately, we did, but it was one of the scariest things I've ever seen, to be trying to work your way through a crowd of 50,000 rather angry people. So let me ask you about the security, because it was really harrowing on January 1st for the entire country. But being a block away from where it happened, what did you sense about that a couple of weeks later?
I think the most sort of visceral reaction I had was the amount of helicopters that were overhead in New Orleans. There just kept being, I would see, Apaches overhead. And I think that there is a just beefed up presence in a way that makes a lot of sense, given how I think the city felt that it was not prepared to the extent that it needed to be. And I was so grateful to feel like there were these people keeping everybody safe. But it definitely feels a little dystopian when, there's soldiers walking around with machine guns, but you're there for a very celebratory event. And it's like two things competing in your brain for what the experience is. And I think it's sort of, I say all the time that two things can be true. And I think that watching sports or anything in a time where there's a lot going on, it requires some compartmentalization.
Charlotte Wilders, with the Charlotte, one thing we always try to do on this program is talk about the people involved in the games, and rarely, if ever, bring their wives, children, or girlfriends. But it's one thing if celebrities, coaches keep their significant others off camera, but the other night on the NFL Honors, Bill Belichick was right there with this young lady who he is dating, and you dealt with that in greater detail. And listen, as somebody much closer to Bill Belichick's age than to yours, I'm really curious about how you view what we are seeing in real time with Belichick, who is 72 or 3? 72, yeah. And his friend is about your age.
24.
24.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
I'm getting to a point where I'm not even close to that age. I'm 35. So, I'm like, I don't know what the kids are up to fully, but I'm so honored that you would ask me about this. Being brought onto an ESPN property to talk about sports gossip is, pretty much my career, anything else that happens now. I co-host this podcast and video show, the Sports Gossip Show, with Madeline Hill. And we have been really diving into the Belichick-Jordan relationship. Our ethos is we're not going to dig up dirt, or if people clearly are private people don't want to be talked about, okay. But I think that when you enter this space as a public person and you're clearly doing things that you want people to talk about, I think culturally that's very interesting too. I mean, Bill Belichick is dating a 24-year-old. Her name is Jordan Hudson, and everybody I think saw her most prominently at NFL Honors, where she wore this silver dress that was sort of had cutouts on it that she said was designed to look like the Lombardi Trophy, which, trophy, a young woman, it felt a little on the nose, but, she looked amazing. And I think that, it's just absolutely fascinating, Paul, because here is this guy who for so long was seen as, this curmudgeonly person. And then there's this young woman who he is now with after he was with Linda Holiday, his ex-girlfriend, very age-appropriate girlfriend, for, many, many years. And it kind of, you can't help but think that, she pops up in a Dunkin' commercial during the Super Bowl with Ben Affleck. And I think that if there is an angle she has to use a platform at all, she is doing a very good job of it, is maybe how I would put it.
And I'm glad you said that you're not comfortable with it, not in terms of the relationship, but just you're not 24. But I am really curious because Belichick just always looked like a drab, boring guy who wore the worst possible T-shirt, sweatshirt you could find at the dollar store.
Oh, Paul.
And I just, I mean, listen, I'm not really intrigued by it as somebody in my late 60s. I mean, I'm almost repulsed by it. Am I wrong?
I think everybody has a very strong reaction one way or another, is how I would put it. We've gotten some comments saying, stop tearing this person down, which I don't think we're doing at all. I think that this is a moment where in our culture, the idea of a trad wife or the idea of a woman who goes along with a man in a way. Jordan isn't really doing that. She has her own, she seems to be entrepreneurial in some way. Her social media, she talks about a jacket she made for the game that had all of Bill's career on the back. And at the same time, they're definitely, it's an older man and a younger woman. And I think the optics of it, it's hard not to sort of be like, okay, well, and I try to be, I think an ethos of our show on the Sports Gossip Show, we try not to be mean, because I think that that's the sort of easiest, most boring version of all of this. We try to look at it in terms of, what can you learn from someone's social media? What can you tell about dynamics? What does that say about our broader moment? And I also think that it's just such a strange branding and like vibes wise for Bill Belichick. I certainly did not see this coming. And so to see him, being kind of cheerful, or we also have a theory that she's the reason that he got an Instagram, because he is so famously anti-social media. And I'm a total nerd, and I analyze the way she writes her captions, and the way he writes his captions look a whole lot like it. So, Madeline and I have been kind of trying to sense, like, is what's her game plan, or is there something that she's working towards here, in terms, maybe a position in college football. Maybe there's a job she's angling for at UNC, Paul. We just don't know.
Yeah, and I'm almost hesitant to even ask her question, because there's almost no way it comes off. There's so many obvious questions, but they do look together, don't they? I mean, you tell me from your perspective.
They look real together. She posted an Instagram where she posted a picture of their texts, and he is in her phone as William, which I was like, oh, okay. But she had a diamond ring on her left, the finger where I wear my engagement and wedding ring. So, who knows what that means? Who knows if that's a real engagement? But, it's something I do want to say is that for a lot of my career in sports, I think that there was this kind of siloing of who people are on the field, who they are off the field. I think I have always believed, and Madeline has too, and we talked about this on our show, that sports is socially acceptable gossip for men, and always has been. And the joy that I feel in being able to talk about this in a way that is more accessible for everybody. And our listenership is split. We have 50-50 men and women, which I think also shows that there is an appetite for knowing who these people are. Like when we watch games, we have the Wikipedia section, the personal life pulled up on our phones, because I want to know who these people are that I'm rooting for or against. And I think in some ways it's a larger part of seeing athletes as more than just athletes. And some of them are up to some really cool things. Some of them and coaches are making choices that you're like, whoa, okay, didn't see that coming. But I've always just found it absolutely fascinating. And I think that in sports media, there is room to kind of look at these things in a more cultural way than typically has been done.
And Charlotte, I think what it says too is how important winning is in our society, because had the Chiefs won, most of the questions today would have been about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Instead, they're like old news, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, instead, did you see Saquon eating that birthday cake on ESPN last night? He must have been so hungry, which I don't blame him. He played a Super Bowl, But even things like that the off the field stuff that is immediately what you're drawn to is so fun to talk about. Like, how does Saquon Barkley feel winning also, if any Giants fans are listening, I'm sorry, this might be a little triggering. How amazing can it feel to your first year with the Eagles, win a Super Bowl with them, and then you get a birthday cake, and then you get cake in the locker room and hang out with your teammates who you are seen as this amazing savior in the city of Philly? It's just such a beautiful narrative.
Charlotte, it was so great to reconnect. Come back soon. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Anytime. My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Paul.
Charlotte Wilder on the most important and burning issues of our day. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls right after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And we began this segment talking to Handsome Joe.
Roll Paul Finebaum, and I didn't go in late. In fact, I'll be honest, I didn't watch any TV last week. I took a little vacation, and I had a week for myself. It's been a while since I've done that. So, but anyway, Paul, I want to talk about this Jalen Hurts. I mean, Oklahoma fans and Alabama fans, I've seen online, and they're kind of arguing about who should claim him. And Paul, I think we both should.
I agree.
I mean, because Jalen Hurts, he had to think of himself, Paul, because after the Devontae Smith, caught the pass from Tua, the next year he did come back at Alabama, and he played backup and ended up coming in and winning the SEC game for us. But the next year, he only had 1 year left. He couldn't ride the bench again, not his last year. He had to, if he had not transferred, he might not even been in the picture last night. So he had to do what was best for him. So it all worked out good for Jalen Hurts. And there ain't nobody in Alabama that dislikes Jalen Hurts. Nobody in Oklahoma dislikes him. I mean, anybody ever listen to him, you can't help but love the guy. And Paul, he's got a big heart, and all he does is win ball games. And he's won so many ball games at Alabama. There's no way we hate him for that, Paul. We had so many good quarterbacks at Alabama. I mean, we've had Tua, Jalen, Mac Jones, and then Bryce Young come. I mean, you're going to have a transfer rap, but when it's your last year and it's obvious you're not going to be the starter, you have to transfer. And he did what was right for Jalen, and for him, I'm proud of him, and I don't think he has any animosity toward Alabama or Oklahoma, either one.
Of course not.
That's something that we can both share, that, we're just proud to have him in our program for when we did. And that goes for both colleges, and I'm sure Philadelphia's proud they got him in there too. But last night seemed like a Georgia defense and Alabama offense, and it just seemed like a SEC game. I mean, it really did, not just Alabama or Georgia, but I mean other teams. I mean, nobody really likes Kansas City. Let's be honest, nobody likes Kansas City, and they've just, Paul, they've got to have the lowest ratings around as far as NFL. They've got to have, Paul, because nobody wanted them to win. I mean, it don't matter who played. I mean, who would have played. The most of America would have been for whoever played Kansas City. But as far as SEC, hey, we're all for Philadelphia last night. And, I'm proud of every guy on that team that won, even the ones that didn't play in the SEC. For all of them, I'm proud of them. And I do know this, because you get these callers sometimes from the Big Ten. And I understand why they don't have a call-in show, because how stupid they sound when they call in.
They do.
I mean, they call your show and talk, try to talk garbage and put up their team and put down the SEC. But I guarantee you this: they're happy that they had some SEC players on Philadelphia's team last night. I can guarantee you that, because they wouldn't even for Kansas City. But Paul, anyway, I enjoyed the show, man. I've been under the weather, so I didn't really go by the Piggly Wiggly to get me nothing today. So I've just had tomato soup and a couple of grilled cheeses, because I've been under the weather today, or yesterday too, but nothing bad, just a little cold. But so I'm just eating light today. But
there's the flu, upper respiratory viruses are all over the place. So be careful, Joe, and great to hear from you. How about Vance up next? Hello, Vance. Vance, you there? No, Vance. Billy D is up next. Hello, Billy.
Hey, Paul. Good afternoon. Tom Brady, that was kind of like his coming out night. What did you take from that? Was he, what did you think?
I was pretty underwhelmed. When I have somebody like Tom Brady, who has won, 6 or 7 Super Bowls,
call him the GOAT.
I want to know is going on in the mind of a Patrick Mahomes when something isn't going well. I don't want to. I hate when analysts tell us what we already know, and that's to me all he did on Sunday night.
Right. Right. It was the obvious. Yeah. And it really was. And let me ask this. Change subject just a little bit. What about the halftime show? I mean, it was no Prince singing Purple Rain in the rain during the Super Bowl. I mean, there was no song that I could like tap my foot.
Well, listen,
to
you have to
or-
understand. I mean, everybody has a particular type of music.
Okay.
And a lot of my friends who loved it would not have cared who wouldn't have been thrilled if Luke Combs came out. So I just think it's, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that I'm rapping all day with Kendrick Lamar, but I do appreciate the fact that a lot of people are.
Well, really? Okay. Well, that's
really.
You know what? I guess it's like, and I'm not trying to, it could be like the people that I'm running around with because everybody.
Well, but listen, not to give you I mean, that's what music is. I mean, I grew up listening to a bunch of stuff I didn't like, and then I started playing stuff in my room that my parents hated, and today they would probably like it.
No, right? No, I get it. AC/DC, Van Halen, and all that stuff is a generational thing. But Paul, have you? I mean, name one of the songs right now. Bang! Come on, one. Real quick.
But Billy, that doesn't matter. You and I aren't. I mean, I'm certainly not in the demo of that audience last night. And listen, to say that the Super Bowl has been affected by the snubs of a certain type of music over the years is an understatement, and that's why they brought in Jay-Z. And he's putting it on, and you probably won't like next year any more than this year, but does it really matter? We're talking about 13 minutes. I'm a big fan of the Rolling Stones, and I thought they were terrible a couple of years ago when they did it. So, I mean, because I think at some point you get tired of 82-year-old rockers. I mean, I admire Paul McCartney, but when he did it, 10 or 11 years ago, I'm like going, come on. Find somebody younger, and ultimately that's what it is. So I know our John from St. Louis wanted Nancy Sinatra. She was busy playing Mahjong last night. We'll take a short break, and we're coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We are back, and Malik is up next in Alabama. Hello, Malik.
Hello, Paul. I'm a first-time caller. I've been watching your show since it's been on SEC Network.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to talk about, Joe already talked about it, but you had a call by James. We're talking about Jalen Hurts and Alabama fans can't claim him and stuff. Well, my opinion, I am an Alabama fan, but my opinion, like Joe said, how about we both claim him? He claims, Jalen Hurts claims both Alabama and Oklahoma. So I don't see what's the big deal about Alabama fans being happy about Jalen Hurts winning the Super Bowl.
I agree with you. I don't think it's an issue at all. I just think some haters out there don't like Alabama. I mean, the guy not only started at Alabama he started in 2 national championship games. He has a degree there.
Yes, he also met his fiancée there too. I think a lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yes. So thank you for taking my call.
Thank
Paul.
you very much. Yeah. And by the way, it's one thing to play at a university and to excel. It's another thing to actually get a degree from there. That does marry you in many ways to the university. Kara is up next. Hello, Kara. Good afternoon.
Hi, Paul.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
We are doing great.
So what do you think about Auburn staying as the number 1 after losing to Florida?
I was a little bit surprised. Now, one of the polls has it reversed. First of all, I think Auburn is getting credit for its body of work, not necessarily the fact that they just lost a game. But I would have had Alabama first, and not that I would have given a lot of thought to it. But the bottom line is they're playing Saturday, so the winner is going to be number one anyway.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with the polling, like with Florida State moving up to 3 instead of 2, or do you think the whole top 25 are correct placements?
Yeah, I mean, I have never voted in that poll. I'm not sure. I think that would be one of the most difficult polls to vote in because it's so subjective about what just happened. I don't want to be dismissive of being number one. It's a big deal when you're, as a student or as a fan, when the number one team comes into your arena or you're number one. But I'll also add, Kara, after watching college basketball for many, many years, it is very insignificant when it comes to what happens next. It doesn't matter. You want a good seed. You want to be a number one seed. That helps. But being number one on February 10th is not important. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it very, very much. Let's continue and check out Michael in Pell City, Alabama.
Hey, Paul.
Hey there.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, sir, why can't we just get the coaches together about the NIL?
Well, the coaches are not the issue. It's their bosses. It's the athletic directors and the presidents of the universities that are the most important people right now.
I know they make a lot of money. What we going to do for next year?
Listen, the coaches are pretty universal in how they feel about this, but it's not only and by the way, whether they like it or not, they are stuck. I mean, these are state laws that enable every one of these athletes to make money, and then there has to be some oversight, which there really isn't much. Hey, thank you very much for the call, Michael. You be well. You take care of yourself. And Jeff is up next in Pittsburgh. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, first time I've ever called, and couple things I wanted to tell you. One is when you mentioned about Hurts, graduating from Alabama. I just want to mention, Joe Burrow graduated from Ohio State before he went to LSU, which was, pretty fast, pretty amazing. But I agree. Somebody was telling me Ohio State hasn't had any good quarterbacks in the NFL, and I said, oh, well, they have Joe Burrow. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, he's an Ohio State graduate. So,
by the way, I did not realize that. But, yeah, I mean, by the way, all this stuff the day after is fairly trite.
Right.
It's what happens in the NFL doesn't necessarily affect your team. But, I mean, it's just pride. And every fan base – I mean, I'm watching the game last night, and my wife is cheering for the Eagles, and I go, why are you cheering for the Eagles? Jalen Hurts. I mean, okay. Yeah. I was cheering for the Eagles more because I really didn't like the other team.
I was too. But I root for Joe Burrow because, I mean, I'm an Ohio State grad also, sure. But I root for Joe Burrow because of his association with Ohio State.
Sure.
And as your earlier caller said, I don't blame him for leaving when he needed to be able to play.
But it turned out to be one of the better moves of all time.
Right, and Ohio State that's when Haskins was quarterback,
right.
And he was excellent. You couldn't kick him out. I mean, he had a great career at Ohio State.
No, he did, and wasn't Justin Fields, he left, he was going there as well.
Yes, I mean, the quarterback room was pretty good, so he did the right thing, and Urban Meyer, to his credit, said, hey, Joe, I'll let you know if you're not going to start next year so you can transfer, and he did after the spring game.
But, yeah, I mean, Quinn Ewers, he went to Ohio State. It is so different than even it was in 2019 with Joe Burrow. Hey, thank you for the call. Great call. We have a long way to go. Plenty of time for you to get in, a lot of different subjects, and we are coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And we are working our way here on a Monday. A lot happening, and Johnny B is up next.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
one thing I've learned about this show today, that I forget the young lady that does the gossip thing, but the only Belichick would have a lady. You know, you hear a trophy wife, but a trophy girlfriend. You know, a symbolic Lombardi trophy dress. You got to give it to Bill. He's got it going on.
Yeah, no, I think it's hilarious. I mean, I would imagine. Can you imagine the conversations between the two?
That's just one thing, but my thing of him was just like some old guy living in the house by himself, and I'll never forget one day you were talking about his shirt and stuff, but he pulled up his pants leg. He kept his challenge flag in his sock.
Really?
And it was just this old plain, goofy-looking sock that come up to about his calf, like you just picture, you know, like we wore in junior high playing football. And I thought, and then here's Belichick with this, you know, hot young lady. To me, it's a fascinating story. I think, you know, I'm proud for him. I hope it works out. Whatever makes him happy is a great thing. But, you know, I fell for the trap yesterday. I bet on Kansas City. I thought surely the refs and the three-peat and all that, and I was let down. But, you know, knowing what I know now, and I just got something for Nicole Auerbach and Danny Cannell and all you other people. Indiana, SMU, Boise State, Arizona. I don't recall any of those being in there. And your show started out with something I had here. 33 SEC players, 21 Big Ten, 19 ACC, and 9 others. And there's 439 plus 129 on injured reserve in the NFL from the SEC. So when y'all are thinking about these teams and praising them for what they're doing, if there's ever been anything, look at the teams that are succeeding now. They're coming to the NFL. I mean, they're coming to the SEC to load their rosters. And Mr. Conyers, you were talking about you and Mr. Conyers doing a Craneworks thing.
Yes.
I think if there's ever been two people I'd hate to face at a rook table or a spades table, if you and Mr. Conyers played with the memories that y'all got, you know how important it is to keep up with the cards played. I think that would be fascinating because, like you say, I have to sit down here and make me some notes just to remember what I'm going to say in the next 5 minutes. And you and him can rapid fire things that from 50 years ago, just like it was happening today. And then I got one other comment about Jalen Hurts. I'm proud of the guy, but I think as it worked out, being benched and getting to watch Tua probably did more for him than any coach because he was having trouble staring people down, throwing with anticipation, throwing at different ball velocities and angles, which are a key. But I think he watched Tua because he's such a master at that, and I think it was a blessing in disguise. And the way that guy handles everything, and just like you've heard the compliments today and from everywhere else, I'm very proud of him, and also for Devontae. You know, guy scores a touchdown, Super Bowl, long pass, hops up and throws that thing at the referee, just like they used to do with class. But anyway, I've enjoyed the show today, and thanks for taking my call.
Bob is in Cincinnati. Hello, Bob.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, do we have any notion about NIL salaries? You know, in baseball, we know what the Dodgers are paying. In the NFL, we got a salary cap. Do you folks in the media, or where can we find out when we're looking about who's number one next year?
Well, there is no salary cap. That's one of the biggest complaints, and that's why they are looking to get some congressional intervention. I mean, you could make a $500, or you could make $5 million.
But is there any underground knowledge out there?
I mean, there is within the industry. Sometimes these things get out, and a lot of times they get out and they're not accurate. So it's really hard to know specifically what these guys are making.
Well, it's frustrating, and thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Swamp Dog is next.
Hello, Mr. Paul. Thank you for taking my call today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Nick Saban helping Kirby Smart and the Georgia football program with the NIL thing. What did he actually do? It says he inspired Kirby to try to create a bill where they don't have to pay taxes? Is that what is
well,
that?
he said he was at Lake Burton having dinner with Saban, and Saban suggested that you need to do something to help Kirby.
Okay. Well, does Alabama have that kind of rule in place in the state of Alabama? The tax
I don't think
thing,
Alabama is any different than Georgia right now.
They're the same way.
It's just amazing that if you make money in Alabama and in Georgia, you have to pay taxes. And the reason they made a big deal about it is that I think Tennessee, Florida, a couple of states do not have income tax. So
yeah, that's right. Florida don't. I didn't know about Alabama, but I know.
Well, Alabama has there is an income tax in Alabama.
Okay, well, let me ask you one more thing too before you let me go. I said a while back that if a combination of Georgia and Alabama couldn't take down the mighty Chiefs, nobody could, and they did it. And Handsome Joe said it right a while ago. It looked like an Alabama offense playing with a Georgia defense. You know, that's the way the game appeared. Those guys, you got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis in the middle of that line, and then you got Hurts and Devontae Smith on the other side. That's great stuff right there. And I'm proud of Jalen Hurts. I'm happier for him than I am anybody on the team because he deserved that. That man has gone through a lot, and a lot of criticism came his way that he didn't deserve. He's a good quarterback.
Well, let me say this, because I remember very well talking about it every day. The criticism of Jalen Hurts was legitimate within the framework of his play. He was not playing well, and had he remained as the starting quarterback, Alabama would have lost the national championship game to Georgia.
Thank you for listening to the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. Watch the Paul Finebaum Show weekdays from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network. Plus, you can listen and watch on the ESPN app.